Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. And late last night, I stayed up and I watched the new superhero film, Netflix original, The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron, Chiwetel Ejiofor, and Kiki Layne. I'll give you my thoughts right after the jump. Real quick before we get into the review, like, share, subscribe to the channel if you like what you see. Turn on those notifications and let everybody know about the place. All right. As soon as we have something, you will be among the first to know about it. So let's talk about the movie. The Old Guard is from director Gina Prince-Bythewood, who has done movies like Love and Basketball and Secret Life of Bees and Beyond the Lights, all films that I really enjoy, but are all very much not genre fare like this superhero film. This movie is based on a book of the same name, which I believe has a 5 volume arc. It may have more, I don't know. I've only read 3 of those, but I will say that the 3 that I've read, this movie falls very much in line with that, without straying pretty much anywhere from that. If you ever listen to our podcast by the same name, we are going to be doing this movie on that as well, where we'll dive a little bit more into the adaptation versus the actual movie. Today, I'm just going to talk more about how I feel about the film as a whole. There are some standouts acting wise. I will say that Charlize Theron, Kiki, and Chiwetel all do a really good job of bringing some type of humanity to what is essentially a caricature or being of immense power in the case of Kiki and Charlize, but in a place that is more so a caricature of someone who has been pain. You actually feel the humanity for those characters, and I think that's one of the saving graces acting wise for this film. I think everyone else, however, does a pretty good job of playing caricatures of them, and you don't really get invested too much into anybody for long periods of time. And for a 2 hour runtime, if I'm supposed to be believing in a team or be behind a team, I don't quite get it. It doesn't all hit for me. Uh, Not to the effect, and this is the thing, this is an effect on the actors. I just think it's more of a script problem or a story problem more so than a script problem. I think the director does a great job. This thing is visually stunning. There's some locales that they go to, some of the shots that they shoot. So a lot of the action is really, really well done and choreographed and styled well. Like it's a solid action film to watch. The problem that I have is a problem that I have with any time that there's a prequel that is talking about characters that we know survive because we see them in the sequel. The other time that that really bothers me, or there's an issue with feeling the weight of any type of action or having any heft behind any of the stuff, is when the characters in the film have a power that is like immortality or healing factor. When you deal with those type of things, it does not allow for the action sequences to have any weight to them, because I know that at the end of the day, no matter how many times they get shot, how many times they shoot others, they're going to get back up and they're going to kill them. And that gets repetitive, it gets old, and it gets very video game cutscene, if that makes sense. By If I'm not playing the video game, it's not easy for me to get invested in what's happening on screen because I'm just watching stuff happen and I have nothing to tie me into it. I and it sucks because I think as well as Kiki, Charlize, Chiwetel, and some of the other actors to a lesser extent are giving, the story arc or how this world exists doesn't allow me to care for anybody so much, because I know at the end of the day they're all going to be fine. Not to get into spoilers, but there is a situation where you may think that somebody may not be fine, but it doesn't happen to the last act of the film, and by that point in time, you're like, I've already kind of wasted and spent my wheels getting to this point. Nothing really stuck with me up into this, and that's not a problem with just this film, and I don't think that's a fault of the director or the actors or even the stunt choreographer. It's more just an issue with this type of film creates a level where you just can't get that invested. It's something like with Logan, where he has a healing factor. Wolverine does, but in Logan, it helps that you say, oh, he's old enough that his healing factor does not work all the time, so there is a sense of danger. For this, there's never ever a sense of danger or being on the edge of your seat in this. It just feels like we're going through action routines just for the sake of it. Something that happened earlier this year with another Netflix original was Extraction. Those action scenes felt more invested in and real and intense because I didn't know the end game because that was a human character versus other human characters. When you start doing this, it's just like, oh god, I'm just now watching people go through the motions of action, and for me, that's not exciting. That's not to say that this film is all a bad thing. I think there's a lot of good on it. I think, like I said, the acting, the action, and stuff is good, and I think that there's a great world that is building here. If you're a fan of stuff like Highlander or any of those type of movies, you'll find something in this to like. Where I have another issue, and this is a big thing that could have saved this movie, but just in addition to, it's just another thing that I'll put on the negative list, is that there's not a villain here. When you don't have a villain that I believe is a true enough threat to the people that are immortal, you're kind of like, then what am I doing here? You know, it's a lot of superhero movies are as good as the person that is playing their villain. You remember Dark Knight stands out to most people because Heath Ledger's Joker is so fantastic. You remember these seasons of Daredevil because Kingpin is. You need that yin and the yang, and for this, it just feels like we were watching four badass soldiers just kind of go through the motion, and they're when they get the chance, they are going to just eat this paper mache villain up because he's irrelevant and means nothing. Now I don't know if that's a thin thing that was done in the comics, if he's that paper thin there, and thus he's that paper thin in the film. But I think if you're going to do that, sometimes comics to movies don't translate, and what reads well in a book does not read as well when you're actually watching it in film, and that's sort of where this movie kind of falls apart. In addition to that, the other thing that really it just is a bad thing, and again, I feel like a lot of this is because the script writer, as an adaptation, was just hamstrung to the original script or the original properties and comics. There are about faces for characters or turns, like people that Andy Charlize's character actually cares about flips on her, or that people that she trusts flips. The problem is none of it has any value or meaning or weight because nothing comes of it. In fact, for the most part, there's those turns or those deceptiveness or those like loss of trust, truthfully, have no bearing on what happens in this film. In fact, some of them end up being the way they're set up, end up being like partners or friends or good guys. So it's hard to say that who the villain is paper mache, and then the people that turn and become turncoats to Andy and the rest of the team also don't matter because they kind of, in a roundabout way, end up forgiving them. Not to go into complete spoilers, but there's some stuff how like people get placed here and people get placed away. But for the most part, it's kind of just like, well, you had to do what you had to do. So come join us. Let's all get a beer and have a good time and continue on for the next story. And that kind of rubs me the wrong way as well. The only other thing that I can think of that I think is the biggest issue with this, and I've seen people responding to this film in this way, is that, oh wow, that was really cool. I look so forward to the next one. And I want to love this film and not quite think about what I may get that's better in the second one. I think the playing field is a little bit better for whatever they plan to do for the future, but I also don't think a movie should anticipate that you're going to even get the option to do a second one. But I think they tried to make this feels a lot like a pilot episode to something that's bigger in the future, and I don't think they quite nailed that to justify me coming back to this world. There's a post-credit or a button at the end that tries to make you think there's going to be more to it, and it could be. It could be a better film once you've kind of laid out the groundwork of what everything has to be here. You've laid out all the action beats and how the action actually works in this world, and you've changed the way that some characters abilities and powers are, that maybe in a second one it could be better. I just don't know if I care enough to come back. So on that list of my list of once is enough, give me a time stone so I never have to think about this again or play it again, Sam. This isn't bad enough where I'll say never ever play this again, because I think there are some fine things here. And I think if you need something to kind of latch onto since you've watched and rewatched all the things that you actually know and love, sure, give this a shot. But for me, once is enough. I never need to go back to this. Even if they made a second one, I wouldn't rewatch this to kind of remember what I need to continue on. I'll just jump into whatever the second one is, because I don't think this is something, not to the detriment of the director, not to the detriment of the actors, but I think the story here is just so weak that all the good things that happen, directing, action, and acting wise, they are kind of left to their own devices and kind of falter, because I think the story of this isn't padded or buffed enough with a solid enough villain or solid enough stakes to make going through this exercise worthwhile. But those are my thoughts. What did you guys think about The Old Guard? Go ahead and leave your comments in the comments below. You can hit us on Twitter at HollywoodADI, or you can hit me up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast by the same name that is on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. This episode will be all about this movie as well, so I'll go into a little bit more depth, and hopefully by then I would have finished the last 2 volumes of the comic, so then we can kind of compare and contrast what they gave us and what actually was on script, or on comic script, if you will. But that's it. I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone is staying safe. I know things are starting to get worse in a lot of parts of the country as far as the coronavirus and COVID-19 goes. So take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and everyone be well. Thanks, guys.